What is up, and welcome to my channel where I teach you how to mix in GarageBand and ultimately get you to be more comfortable in mixing and more confident in it so that you can release more music. That is my number one goal. I have so many friends that write music all the time, but they kind of lack the confidence in their mixing ability and can't afford to pay a mixer. And so they just have tons of songs just sitting there and they never release them. So that was the start of this whole journey to get you to release more music. That's the goal. All right, so today we are continuing with this mix series, and we're going to be mixing bass guitar and acoustic guitar. I'm going to kind of combine them for time's sake, and I think you're going to get a lot out of this one. But before we get into that, I get so many questions from YouTube and from students asking, how to mix music, and the number one question I get all the time is, how do I mix vocals? How do I EQ vocals? How do I add distortion to vocals and use it musically? How do I do compression? Like, what does compression look like, and what are the settings that I should have? And I was getting these so often that I decided to make a completely free Ultimate Vocal Preset bundle that works for GarageBand and for Logic Pro X. This bundle has over 30 presets for you to use on your own vocals, and the hard thing about presets is that there's not one preset that's going to be great for every single vocal. So I included a free training video that shows you how to, number one, put these on your computer so you can access them easily, and also how to slightly manipulate them so that they can work for any vocal. It's a great training. It's completely free. If you go to cellardoorsound.co/free presets or click the link down below in the description, then you get access to those and you can have them, and they're great. So go use them. And I love getting responses from students and about presets, and I love it when they send me their vocal and it sounds good. It sounds great. So if you are that person, go grab it. Go grab it before it's gone. All right, so let's get into this video. This has been a really fun song to mix. We've gone through the drums. We've done a little bit of electric guitar. And if you haven't seen any of the other videos in the series, a link just popped up there. Go ahead and go watch them one by one. They're kind of leading into each other to where we're getting a full mix of this song. So let's listen to where we are right now. We're just in the first chorus. We're kind of just sticking there just to get a good solid sound for this song. So you can kind of hear there that everything that we've done so far sounds really good. The drums sound really good. The electric guitars sound really good. So we just need to kind of move along here because the bass, to me, is not really jiving with the kick drum. I'm not really getting it pronounced like that kick is. So we're going to go to this bass guitar and kind of just take a listen to it real quick. All right, so the number one thing that I'm looking for when I'm listening to bass guitars is, one, are they pretty clean? Is there any weird tones kind of popping out, mainly in the low end? And luckily on this one, it is pretty clean, but I'm kind of missing some drive and grit out of this bass, so that's what we're gonna try and achieve here. This is just a DI bass, really clean, and I kind of want to dirty it up a little bit and make it more present in this mix so that you can hear it with that kick drum, and also so we're more likely to hear it on an iPhone or small earbuds or something like that. A lot of time the bass gets lost, and so we're going to do what we can to make that kind of come out. So the first thing that I want to do is check the EQ here, and I already know that I'm gonna take this little low cut and I'm gonna keep it right here at about 20 hertz. This is doing just a little bit to kind of clean up that super sub low. If you don't have good headphones, you're not going to really hear that, but it helps a lot kind of distinguish from the kit. And then I also am going to raise the high end just a little bit. Let's push play and listen here. All right, cool. So luckily the low end in here is sounding pretty good. I just added a little bit of high, and then now what we're going to do is add some compression. So I'm going to go to this completely free plugin by Klanghelm. It's super, super good. It is the MJUC Junior. Link will be down in the description. I love this plugin. It's very simple compression. What we're going to do is change this time constants here to fast, because I kind of want a fast attack, fast release, and we're just going to kind of control this bass a little bit. It's pretty dynamic, and we really need it to be solid and kind of right there with that kick drum. So I'm going to be looking to compress. Of course, I'm just listening to it, but I'm kind of shooting at this gain reduction here to be -3, 4, 5, somewhere in there. So we'll kind of compress it, and then we'll add a little bit more gain to get the full bass to be stick out a little more. All right, so now that we kind of have that compressed, let's listen to it with the drums here. I want to hear it with the drums and see if we're kind of helping it out so far. All right, so to me, we're getting closer here. What I like to do a lot of the time is turn off the plugins that I've affected so far and play it with the drums and make sure that we're making an improvement. We never want to mess up the sound or make it worse, so I'm constantly just turning stuff on and off and just seeing if we're making improvement. So this is with the compressor off and the EQ that we did off. All right, there, the bass kind of sounds not as clean. It's kind of just over boomy in that super low end, and let's turn this on and see what we got. All right, so already it's seeming like it's kind of marrying with that kick drum so much better with this compression. We're kind of just controlling those dynamics, keeping it similar with the kick drum. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is I want to add some grit to this bass guitar. So what we're going to do something I've done a lot on this channel, is we're going to actually duplicate this bass guitar. So I'm going to right-click the bass track, and then we're going to go to New Track with Duplicate Settings. This just creates another track that's exactly the same as the bass. We're going to name it, I'm just going to name it Dirty Bass. And then I'm going to click the clip here, this waveform, and hold down Option and drag it down, make sure that I'm aligned and in the same spot. And now we have two bass guitars here. So what we're going to do, this is called parallel processing, so it's using two signals and kind of manipulating them differently. So there are two signals that are exactly the same and then manipulating them pretty different. And I already know I'm going to want to add some distortion to this bass. I don't want to distort the entire bass guitar because I want that low end to be kind of clean, but I'm mainly looking to distort sort of the mids and the highs here. So I'm going to pull up another free plugin by Fuse Audio Labs that I've used a lot. It's so good. This is the RSW2395C. Not a great name for a plugin, but this thing is awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this drive all the way up. This is adding just some analog distortion, and let's just see how it sounds on its own. All right, so already it's sounding pretty good. I already know I kind of want to add some high end of this, so we're going to add a little bit of highs. And I kind of am going to want to add some mids. So I'm going to go around about 1K here. This is kind of a wide band. We're just going to boost it up and see what we get. Okay, cool. So on its own, doesn't sound super great, but we're going to mix it in with the other bass. So I'm going to solo both basses. I'm going to actually go to the EQ on this dirty bass, and I'm going to take this low cut and move it pretty far up because I'm not wanting this low end in this bass guitar. We're going to blend it with this other one. All right, so we're getting a little bit of the string noise, but it's not really bothering me. And you can hear a big difference. If I mute this dirty bass and we hear the bass on its own. Sounds okay, sounds kind of clean. And then we're gonna turn on our dirty bass with this blend. All right, let's hear it with the drums. This is where you really start to hear it. So it's almost like we're affecting just the strings and then the actual bass, the low end bass, and it makes a big difference with the track. So let's level this with the track real quick, and then I'll show you kind of a before and after. All right, so that seems like it's in a good spot. I had to raise it a little bit when the full track comes in because you're not hearing as much of those kind of artifacts that are in there. So let's mute this dirty bass and play just the normal bass that we did. Sounds pretty good, sounds clean, and let's add this energy with this dirty bass. It just added a little bit of grit in there and some excitement in that bass guitar, and it does make a big difference. The energy completely shifts. Like with just this normal bass, it just kind of sounds like a clean bass chorus guitar, and then when you add this dirty bass in here, it really brings that drive up and makes it really effective. And you can do some cool things with this where you can only have this kind of dirty, distorted bass in the choruses, so that lifts up the choruses and keep it clean in the verses. It's pretty powerful to mix in this way. So that is the bass guitar. Sounds pretty sweet. Let's go ahead and move on to the acoustic guitars. So the only thing I've changed in this session is I had all these acoustics and B3 organ and Rhodes all as mono files, a left-right, so I bounced them all to get them all stereo. Makes it easier to mix. So let's listen to these acoustics and see what we got. All right, so these acoustics sound awesome. They're recorded really well, and on their own, they actually sound really great. They don't need a lot, but in this mix, there's a lot of things. There's an electric guitar, there's pianos and drums and bass, and this sound can kind of get muddy, and you can hear the way they're playing. This needs to be driving that chorus. The dun 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 dun. We need that, especially because there's some good high end in these guitars, and they'll really make the chorus kind of shine in that way. Because we don't necessarily have that with we have that a little bit with the drums. The electric guitar is not really, so we're looking at these acoustic guitars to kind of have that really nice sparkly high end. So I already know that these are a little bit muddy, so let's go ahead and do some EQ work on them. So I have the first acoustic soloed. Let's listen to just this first one. All right, so the first thing we want to do, kind of as always, is get rid of that this low-end rumble. We don't really need a lot of it. So I'm going to move this guy up to about 70-ish hertz. All right, cool. And then now I want to get rid of a little bit of the mud so I can really bring these forward and make them shine. There's a lot of frequencies in this low mid area. Definitely a lot of drums. The bass takes up this area, and the electric guitar is a little bit lower in this area, take up a lot of space. So we don't need this acoustic guitar to really be shining in this low mid area. And that's kind of key. So we're kind of carving out and letting other instruments take this over, and we're really going to want these guys to be in the more mid and high end. So the first thing that we're going to do with this guy is bring down some of that that kind of those muddy frequencies. All right, so that's sounding pretty good. And then now I already know I'm going to want to bring up some high end. So I'm going to find a nice little sparkly high here in this area. All right. Sounds pretty good. And it sounds like there's a little bit too much high end, but I think with the entire track, it's going to be in a really good spot. So now let's add some compression. I want to, same thing with the bass, a little bit lighter this time. I want to kind of control these a little bit. So we're going to go to the Klanghelm DC1A3. These will all these free plugins will be linked down below. This is a really simple plugin. I'm not wanting a lot of compression on these acoustics. I'm just kind of wanting those attacks to be slightly softened and then bring up the overall volume to make that drive clear in these choruses. So we're going to hit this little relaxed button, and then I'm looking for about a -2-ish gain reduction whenever they're really hitting the strings. And so we just drive this input up to achieve that. Let's see where we're at, just how it is. All right, cool. That's in a decent spot. Now let's do it to the second acoustic. Let's listen to this one. All right, so this one has a little bit more mud, but it's still, same thing, sounds really good. So let's do the same thing. We're gonna cut some lows here out of this guy. And then we're going to lower these low mids a little bit, tighten the Q. And we're going to add some high end. Awesome. That's sounding really good. Now let's do the same thing and add the same compressor on here, which is the Klanghelm DC1A3. Awesome. That's in a good place. Now let's listen to these acoustics in the mix, and we're going to use these compressors here with the output to try and get them at the level they need to be, if they need to be brought up at all. Here we go. All right, cool. So I think I have a little bit too much high end in these guys, so we're gonna lower them just a couple dB on each of them, but overall these are in a really good spot. Whoops. Awesome, so they're adding that drive, it's sounding really good. Let's turn off our EQ and our compressor for each of these. And let's make sure that we did something that is adding value to this track. Let's play it without any of the plugins. So you can already hear the guitars are a little muddy, they're not clear. I can kind of tell there's an acoustic in the background, but not really. That the low mids are too much. They're kind of peeking out at random times, and the high end just really isn't there. So let's turn on our plugins for each of these and see where we're at. Awesome. That's a really, really big improvement to the track as a whole, and so that's sounding really, really good. Let's do a quick before and after of everything. So let's mute our dirty bass. We're going to turn off our plugins. Oops, on our bass. Almost deleted the plugin. And we're going to turn off our plugins on the acoustic. And let's listen to this mix here. All right, so the bass is too much. It's pretty muddy. I'm not getting any real clarity out of it, and the acoustic guitars again aren't really there. So let's turn these plugins back on for the acoustic guitars and unmute this dirty bass, and then turn the plugins back on. Let's listen. Awesome. So this is in a really good spot now, and this is the first time in this Better Mix series that the song is actually starting to sound like a mixed song. It's really cool. The drums don't sound too much anymore, and that's what's hard about mixing sometimes, is when I'm mixing, I am thinking about things down the line. So when I'm mixing the drums and making them big and full and using that snare reverb, I'm thinking about how I'm going to make everything else be more clear and more out there in front. And a lot of times it gets difficult because sometimes you'll undermix the drums and the bass, and then you'll get to the acoustic guitars and all these different things, and all of a sudden your mix isn't lively enough and have that energy. And so that's like the one thing that's a little bit more difficult to understand when mixing something. But generally, I like to get my drums to sound rockin', like regardless of the track. I mean, of course, I'm listening to the track, but I just want them to be full and big, because you can always tame them down later. It's a little harder to go back and make them bigger again, depending on the choices you make. But the drums really set the tone. So if I can get my drums to sound good, then all these other tracks, I just get to kind of match at that level and that intensity, and mixing becomes easy at that point. So yeah, that is bass and acoustic guitars. I really hope you enjoyed this one. Next week, we are going to be working on the organ and the Rhodes and kind of finalizing the overall effects for this track, and then we'll probably do one more series where we do some advanced mixing and then mastering of this instrumental song. So one more time, if you have not gotten my Ultimate Vocal Preset Bundle, I highly recommend you go grab it at cellardoorsound.co/free presets. There's over 30 presets for EQ, compression, saturation that you can use on your vocals inside of GarageBand and inside of Logic. And you can get a really great sound really fast, and that was the whole point of making that preset bundle. So go grab that. It's completely free, and I'll see you next week for another video. Have an awesome week and make some more music. Peace.